Genesis 49 chaverenga verse 22 kusvika 26. Genesis 49 chaverenga 22 kusvika 26. Mubhuku rokutanga rinonzi Genesis. Mamwe mavhesi handisi kuverenga. Pana ndichaverenga ndinofunga kuti ma-highlights 22 kusvika 26. Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. The archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him, but his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Yaakov. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. Even by God of thy father, who shall help thee, and by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with the blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep, that lieth under the blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. Ndo yatatanga kuverenga. Imwe yandogona kuverenga nezvayo ndichaverenga Daniel 9:25. Daniel 9:25. Daniel 9:25. Know and understand. All right, Daniel 9:25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Mashiach, the prince, shall be 7 weeks. You can come in. You can come in, please. Right? Ndo yataverenga iyo. Toverenga imwezve. Rasi chaverenga mavhesi ndo andichazama kutsanangura pane zvandichabva nokutsanangura. Matthew 17 ndofunga munogara muchisiwa ndichiverenga iyi. Matthew 17 verse 10 and 11. Matthew 17 verse 10 and 11. That's what zvibayana mavhesi. And his disciples asked him, saying, why then say the scribes that Elijah must first come? And Jesus answered and said, Elijah truly shall first come and restore all things. Elijah shall truly come and restore all things. But I say unto you that Elijah is come already, and they knew him not, but have done with him whatsoever they listed. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them. But I want us to understand a time has come to teach you Father, in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, tokutendai munotaura nesu nguva dzose, tinokutendai madzikisa matauro amakuita nesu pamwaka uno, nokuti yasvika zvino nguva yasvika yokuti vanomunamata vakunamatei mumweya nomuzvokwadi. My God, my Lord, Holy One of Israel, ndokutendai nguva dzose makasimudza zvakazvidzika kuti ukuru hwenyu huonekwe. Tisu tichaonekwa ukuru hwenyu nokuti hatina history, hatina kwatinobva, hatina mbiri yatinayo, asi Mwari makatishandisa pabasa guru rakadai. My Father, the Most High, I thank you in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. Right. Regai ndizame kutsanangura nyaya yedu ichaita sekuti inofamba mubhaibheri handizvo, but inyaya one. Right. Let me talk about it. There are two vanhu vakuru vainzi Enoch and Elijah. Now this man, zvimwe zvavaita, vamwe tongoverenga muBible kuti Elijah had a school of prophets. But what was the school about? Part of what Elijah was doing was to tell his students about the calendar of God. Part of what Enoch was also doing was to tell about the calendar ya Mwari. Muviri wavo, Enoch talked about weeks. And Enoch was saying, this earth will last for 10 weeks. That was Enoch. And he divided his periods into 700. Charity 1 week year was 700 years. So now for us to have 10 weeks, it's going to be 10 times 700, which means this earth will last for 7,000 years. That was according to Enoch. And Elijah, in terms of the time, they agreed, but it is how they arranged the times. Elijah divided the time frame into what he called 14 honors. Each honor was 500 years long. So Elijah was talking of 14 weeks, 14 honors. Enoch told about 10 weeks, but they all came to 7,000 years, right? Now, how are these 7,000 years divided? Of course, the other one was using 500 years, the other one was using, but they also agreed that the last 1,000 years was a Sabbath. The last 1,000 years was going to be a Sabbath. And according to the book of Revelation, for 1,000 years, Jesus Christ will reign on earth. And it is that time that the devil will be arrested. Right? So after 6,000 years, there is going to be a Sabbath. Right. So what year are we now? And of what relevance is it to us? If we go back to the recordings that were done long back, we are in the year 5951. In the year 5951, which means we still have about 49 years before before we get to 6,000. We have about 49 years according to that calendar, and that calendar is correct. Right. That calendar is very, very correct. Right. Now, related to what we are going to discuss today is a man called Joseph. And see, there's a time, why am I speaking in English? I want others to understand, those that don't speak our language. I'm addressing a bigger audience, right? So, there is a man who was called Joseph. And you would remember that there's a time that God told me that Zimbabwe, Israel, and Ethiopia share the same origin. And it is from this same origin that I then was made to understand, or I actually understood, that the country called Zimbabwe, the country we call Zimbabwe is Joseph. The country that we call Zimbabwe is Joseph. So, which is why I read Genesis 49, verse 22 to 26. There are 24 verses that are dedicated to Jacob or Israel, telling his children the promises upon their lives. There are 24 verses. 5 were allocated to Joseph, and the other 5 to Judah, and the rest to the others. So you can do your maths and see how they were distributed. Why was it like that? It just meant these two were very important in terms of what they carried as a promise to mankind. So how is it that Zimbabwe is Joseph? So as God was explaining to me about this man called Joseph, he said, look at the Bible. I went and looked at the Bible. And then it was very clear. I then realized what God was talking about. He said, how many times did Joseph dream? I said 2 times. And how many times did Pharaoh dream? 2 times. Why was it 2 times, not just 1 time? And that's when God told me the first dream was about Joseph, the guy that was in Egypt. The second dream had everything to do about Zimbabwe. And that was the same for Pharaoh. So when Joseph dreamed his first dream, you would find that it's his brothers who bowed down. But the second dream talks about his mother and father bowing down to Joseph, which is something that never happened because Leah died before Joseph became anything. So that prophetic word was not meant for, which is why when Pharaoh promoted Joseph, he gave him an Egyptian name, Zaf something, but which just meant the God who reveals or something like that. Why? Because the first prophetic dream had to do with, and you find even for Pharaoh, the first prophetic dream talked about Nile. Why? Because it was a dream that pertained to Nile and Egypt. But the second dream does not talk about Nile. It talks about grain and corn. Can I continue? Right. So Joseph, so this man Joseph, as God was explaining to me, his brothers hated him, not for what he had done, but because of the dream that was upon his life, which is why the Zimbabwe has always been hated. It was about the dream that is upon the nation of Zimbabwe. Back to the calendars. Joseph lived for about 39 years before he reunited with his father. Well, it was some he left him at 70, and at around 39, that's when and as God was telling me about this man called Joseph, he said Zimbabwe will also enjoy for between 37 and 40 years. So count now from now up to when? The days of the trials and tribulations should be around 2064, 2065, 2065, 2067. Why? Because Zimbabwe has to enjoy itself now. I think this is good news for those Vangawachira marriage. There will be time for you to enjoy your marriages. The world is not about to end. So the Joseph now. I want you to connect the dots. The prophetic word upon Joseph talks about vineyards. It's talking about vineyards. And where we go for prayer, it's called Mount Carmel. Carmel means a vineyard or garden of God. Why is it called like that? We go to Matthew 17, verse 11. The restoration of all things has to happen in the garden. So this is right. There was a sign on the 23rd, 24th of September 2017. And that sign was in the heavens. The sign that you find on Revelation 12 is the sign that appeared. I think this one you can Google and find out. This was something that was known by, I don't think it was a secret. The sign, the giving birth of a son. But the Bible then says the son was taken up to heaven. And if you are reading the Bible, you would think it was soon after the birth of the child that the child was taken up to heaven. But it wasn't like that. It's not going to be like that. The son will be birthed, given birth, and you will be conquering, as in Revelation 6, the first seal. And I saw the first seal was opened, and I heard a voice say, "Come," and behold was a rider, and the rider was on a white horse, and he was bent on conquering and conquering. But now 2017, I want us to know that the promise of God, and the birthing had started. And the Bible says, and there was a dragon that was waiting to consume that baby. And if you look at this ministry, the ministry called Congregation of All Nations, and from then up to now, it has been battle after battle, and the battles were escalating and escalating and escalating. Why? Because the dragon did not want the child to be birthed. There is Joseph, the land, but there is a son within who carries all the people that are going to carry out the whatever God has planned. So 2017, the sign appeared, and when was according to the Hebrew calendar now, it was exactly 4 days after the beginning of the year 5778. So we had 57777 ending. And then 4 days later, on the 24th of September, and in the Hebrew calendar, it's going to be 5778. And it's not a coincidence. This was a new beginning. This was another stretch that started in the kingdom of God. So from then up to now, it has been battle after battle. And I'm talking about this dragon. And if you were in this church, you could have witnessed how we have been encountering different types of obstacles and fights and all that. And yesterday, as we were coming down the road, there was a time that I said, I saw a matter of all nations, but this time we had to come to this Leviathan spirit. Why? Because without conquering the Leviathan spirit, which is the dragon that was waiting to consume the child, there is no way we can have that new beginning or whatever we've been waiting for. So, Daniel says, Daniel 9:25, know and understand that from the time that a proclamation is given for the restoration of Jerusalem, count 7 weeks. And 7 weeks is 7 by 7, which is 49. And what they call a week are 7 years. So 7 weeks. When was the proclamation made? The proclamation to restore Jerusalem was made on 1st April 1969. And if you count 7 weeks from then, you come to 1 April 2018. And of those that were present, that I call it the day of Pentecost. Prophet Maiwapaliti. That was a confirmation of the prophetic word. So I know it's going to be difficult for you to imagine that Pharaoh was dreaming about Zimbabwe. Joseph was dreaming about Zimbabwe. Why is the Bible talking about Joseph? It is this time. Because if you read the Bible in the book of Revelation, the writer will be given a crown. And being given a crown while still on earth is like God bowing down to you even while also. And there's going to be God himself bowing down to his own son, and it's also going to be the whole earth, which is the mother, bowing down to. Why? Because purpose is restoration of all things and conquering and to conquer. The person, of course, I know most of you might get lost. So does it mean that self? No, it's not going to be like that. But generally, there is a victory. We will have a challenge here, a challenge there, but in this, these are years of prosperity, these are years of success, these are years of dominance. All these years that I'm talking of, or I was talking of, my years of dominance by the church and by Zimbabwe. So from 2017 up to now, it has been a time of overcoming whatever the dragon was trying, in his streets and all that. It was all meant to be like that. Why? Because we were coming to 2026. And the good thing, and as a Pharaoh, in as an individual, I am 13 years into ministry. And it is at 13 years that Joseph became the governor of Egypt. Which means 2026 is a year that everything is fulfilled. 2026 is a year of graduation. 2026 is a year of we are going to have everything sorted and attended to by the Almighty. Why? Because if you stand like what Joseph did, there is nothing that can stop you. And this is where we are as a church. This is where we are as a nation. And from now up to Pamakorana, these are years of prosperity, years of flourishing, years of dominance, years of... These are the good years that we've been waiting for. So this ministry is in every book. This nation, this ministry, I talk about this nation. The reason why it is called Congregation of All Nations is because it's a congregation of all nations. 7 years of tribulation. No more 7 years. They are going to be 7. Every person, the last 7 years will be years of great prosperity before the coming in of the Antichrist. So that the prophetic words being, if you go to the book of Enoch 33, 40 to 44 are specific to this ministry. If you go to Numbers, it should be Numbers 24, verse 17, that man called Balaam, he saw, because the scepter, the iron scepter is rising from Israel. And according to the spiritual realms, I want us to understand that this man Joseph, his promotion was such that he was no longer a son to Jacob, because Manasseh and Ephraim replaced him. And where was he? It means he was as good as Israel. Which is why Zimbabwe and Israel are the same and they originate from the same. Why? Because of what happened in Egypt. And Egypt is Shaikwa. If you go to the book of Revelation, to a place figuratively called Sodom in Egypt. Why is it being called figuratively? Did the person who wrote not know the real name? No, it was not a time to know it. But you must know a place figuratively called Sodom and Egypt. Egypt, wood desert. Sodom, sin. And in the Bible, you have the wilderness of sin, which was a picture of what was to happen now. The wilderness of sin and all that. Majority, the Bible, there is Mount Sinai, there is Mount Horeb. And you find that this man called Moses operated on this other side of Mount Sinai. We are told that it was on Mount Horeb when he had that encounter. And God said, this is where you are going to fellowship with me, if you are obedient. But we never hear of Moses going back to Horeb. Did we ever hear of Moses going back to Horeb to fellowship with God? No. Because it was a promise that was in the future. Most of the prophetic words in the Bible, they are sort of, they are double. Is it a double? What I don't know. I can't remember how they coined them to show it is something that is too. Which is why the book of Zechariah says, "You and the men seated before me are men symbolic of times to come." Later, when I priest Joshua and Zechariah and all the other guys, they were symbolic. Why? Because most of what was happening, when you find Moses marrying a Cushite woman, it was something prophetic. In the end time, it's God to get married to a Cushite church. And those that do not know will talk too much. So what am I saying? God's calendar is that now Joseph has to take his place. How? We don't know. But we just know that things changed overnight for Joseph. For those that are waiting for marriage, don't think you'll wait that long. For those that are waiting for money, don't think it will be a matter of you just spin. God has already been spinning that money for you. So the restoration of all things that I'm talking about it started sometime in 2017, but it's now gaining momentum because this is now 9 years after, 9 months after the child is now being birthed into the world. Why? Because the dragon has been overcome. These things. Saka mukaonyenzi guilt offering tonda bhuku rikutitona mu1818 topinda mune Psalm 2 is all about this ministry, the whole of Psalm 2. 1 Samuel 2:35, I will raise for myself a priest teaching. It's talking about these times, it's talking about this ministry, it's talking about this nation. This way. Pakatonzi wakaona mahope akarotiwa na Faro angava mandisiku mabagwe, but he was dreaming about something that is relevant to Zimbabwe. The first dream, George, Joseph, no yanga ine chekuita naye. The second dream had everything to do with Zimbabwe. You think it must be for some other country other than Zimbabwe? And you find with Ephraim and Manasseh, and Ephraim and Manasseh no vanga kutobuda shine. I'm not sure with Ephraim and Britain, UK, I mean Britain and America. Who is Ephraim and who is Manasseh? Ephraim was firstborn in Jeremiah 31 verse 9. He's said to be the firstborn, but he has abused that position as the firstborn to be a bully. And it is now time for the restoration of all things. The blessed one is Joseph, and it is his blessings that will bless the whole world. Nations will come to Joseph. They will be left with no option other than to come to Joseph. I don't know what will happen that will make every other country rely on Zimbabwe, but this is what is going to happen. How? That's not my business. Why? That's not my business. My business is to believe my Father who is in heaven. I was going through my chronicles and I know some years back, and the message is very clear. It's only that it's been years that I last read them. But as I was reading them, and God was highlighting, it's about congregation of all nations, the scriptures. Hakuna, perhaps the day of the Lord started in 2017 and is going to end somewhere around 20. I'm not sure, but I think the longest we can go is 2074, before the coming of Christ. So it's going to be, but we are not in a hurry. Yes, these are end times, it's true. But you must know there will be time for you to enjoy your prosperity. There is a time for you to enjoy whatever God will bless you with. We are not to fast track. Wakagarapa iwo hauna 37 years again. Saka nguva yasara yakareba kudarika yawararama. Saka unochemei. Yes, these are the end times, but it's not ending tomorrow. There is time for people to find themselves. There is a time for people to recover. There is time for people to enjoy whatever God will bless them with. It is going to happen here. The church, the abomination that will cause what? Not the desolation that will cause abomination. It will happen in the temple, right? And people will then run away. The church will then run away from the temple and go and worship a place figuratively called Sodom and Egypt. But that is not going to happen tomorrow. The temple has not yet been built. And the temple will take years to be built before it can be used. And it's going to take years to be used. Saka, usafunga kuti muri kuruzirira. They have no reason to be in a hurry. They have every reason to be patient. And I'm releasing this information now because they've been patient enough to get to the point where it has been released. All this time they are wanting but now it's very specific. Prosperity, I'm not prosperity, it's automatic. Whatever God will use to empower us, will empower us to a point that no one can fight that empowerment. Aisikure nguva yekuti zvishamisire kwamunhu wekeni. Aisikure. Mozoti kuda pamwe tetodada totochinja manhamba efoni. Hatimboregi. Inenge ngopuwawo vanofanira vachipuwa. Haisi kuti vamwe group congregation of all nations wotonotsvaka wotoita kuinbooks aiwa hayo that time will come to an end. Hatiti kunyeperana. Tinopuwa window period ekuita certain things to make things correct. It's very easy to walk into a room yavanhu vaunoita fellowship with. It will be it will come miss 4 or 5 services. When you come back, especially right, you'll be very uncomfortable and uneasy. You feel out of place. This is what is going to happen to some of us. We are not saying we will have a policy of but things will be different. Let's be honest. Whatever they were supposed to get is not what they will get. It can only by the grace of God. Congregation of all nations is a big ministry. But it will be by grace of God. Kutukabuda na responsibilities, not responsibilities. I don't know to say. So the calendar of God, this is the last jubilee before the coming of Christ. That is very true. And the next person we are going to have as a president is the president that is coming from God. I will not be surprised if he has a name that is an Egyptian link. Because Egypt, Jesus Christ, when he's born, an angel says, because it's not safe here. Jesus Christ went to Egypt and stayed there for about 3.5 years. And this ministry was also about 3.5 years long, which means 7 years. And this is what we are going to have in these end times. 3.5 years, we'll be dealing with the beast. The beast that we overcame, it will come back. And for 3.5 years, we'll be dealing with that beast. Then, it is in the middle of the trials and tribulations that the Antichrist will cause a desolation that causes abomination. When he does that, the heavens will be very angry because of that. And it is that time that the devil will be held onto the earth. So the next 3.5 years, we are going to have someone Satan on earth. And those are tough times. 3.5 years. The first 3.5, they're very tough. The next 3.5 will be tougher. Why? Because the devil will be very angry. The Bible is very clear. The devil will be very angry. Sorry. So the book of Revelation, inongoda revelation, and inongoda kuti tichizira nguva dzedu. But the times have already been given. in terms of what will happen in the last 7 or so years before the coming of Christ. But maybe what was hidden was what will happen now. You must know the times. They can only be hidden to those that do not know. But the times are clear. You will still have time. I'm not saying you will have time to sin and then also tendewa kumberuko. Unofa usati watendeuka. Apa ndinokupayo ikurudziro yekuti do not despair, do not be discouraged. The period that we have waited for is a drop in the ocean to the period that we are going to be enjoying. Joseph spent 13 years waiting and ruled Egypt for 70 years. Akainvesta 13 years Joseph. Akadlala 70. Imainvesta ngani? Mona kudlawo pakati penyaya makore. Enisha zvakanakira uri kudla uri pano wozonyanyisa kudla uri kudenga. Kudla kwapanapa tuma small. Pane kudla kuri pane kudla kuri kumberi. So, if you find the Bible, Jeremiah, what did you see? I see the branch of an almond tree. That branch of an almond tree has everything to do with these times. Daniel, what you talk about? Can I say Daniel 12? These are times that were prophesied long. Can I say, if you read the book of Isaiah, every 7th chapter after chapter 28 is to everything to do with this ministry and this nation. Calendar not over the For how long have you waited that you get discouraged? The good thing, 1, the waiting is over. 2, you will have ample time to enjoy yourself and enjoy the goodies. The time has come, the time has arrived. It is now. So don't be discouraged by political developments. Political developments. There is no development on the political. It's all going to be spiritual. And it's the spiritual that is authority over the physical. Kana kudenga uko kusisina leo mashuku mashumanene chiti ami mbona motisore calendar yashota right. Zimbabwe yakupinda prosperity nokuti nguva dzakwana dzaMwari. Saka wose anogwisana neprosperity unodzura. How? That's not our issue. That's not our. It's not to demonstrate. But to demonstrate, that's the lowest of Nangiri. They work with kingdom as Satan unengori chitukwana. Chitukwana ndo chotumwa kumairanzi. Mamzise. Chitukwana chinacho ndo chiya chikuti chombotumwa chingodi chikabatwa chitani kureva futi. Ndo zvanengori. Uchiti do you know that you see, that is the garden of God. If you read the Bible, you understand that Jesus Christ vakanamata in the garden of Gethsemane. He was in a wine press, and that's why he prayed. When you are praying there, it can never be measured anywhere else in terms of the authority. If you pray from that garden, you are far much more than the people who are Toi. Kuti vari Toi vasarohwa unge vadonona mata. Otherwise vari Toi vakakwa. My battle is calling. vamwe venyu ndai maigona kutengesa zvinhu zvakavora muchitiza maitengesa nemadiro amaita mari kuti vazozona ndaita ndapedza zvose. Do you have any questions? Maybe I was too fast.